Hi and welcome to PolyOriginals with Fiona Abel-Smith. So today I thought we'd have a go at this little project, and this is made with a fun cane, which is just this one simple bit, which I think has got a bit of an Art Nouveau feel to it, so nice sort of flowing lines with almost a flowery effect. As always, I'll be taking you through everything you need to know to make the cane. The bail I'm using on the back of today's pendants is a design by Jan Montazi, who's a wonderful polymer clay artist, and I'll be putting a link to how to make the bail in the details below the video. So let's get started and see what we need to make the project today. So the tools we need for today's project are fairly straightforward when working with polymer clay. A craft knife, polymer clay blade, or tissue blade as it's sometimes known as, some form of knitting needle. This is just a short blunt-ended one. Just going to use that to smooth over the sides. Nothing more than that, so it doesn't have to be any particular size. Some form of roller that's suitable to use with polymer clay. I'm going to use a beading needle, which is a polymer clay beading needle which just got a nice sharp point at one end just to make a hole in the earrings. Cutters to cut out the shape. When we bake our piece, it's going to be baked on a mould. So I've just got a stainless steel round dome here. Any dish will do, any round dome will do. A used light bulb is good. There's lots of different ways of getting some form of rounded shape. So I'm just going to use this one for today's session. When we're smoothing our clay, a little bit of wax paper, greaseproof paper, tracing paper, something like that is very handy. And if we are smoothing down, then if you have one, a stainless steel soap is also very handy. Don't worry if you haven't got this, the roller will do instead. When we're working and when we're baking, a tile to bake on is very handy. And when we bake, we always tent everything in foil, so some foil will be good as well. To do the bail on the back, a couple of decent sized round cutters are going to be what you need for that. Some cling film, just a small piece. As normal, I'll be using a measuring sheet just so I can take slices and get my cane down to a recognised size. And this one is freely available from www.printablepaper.net, and it's a 1-inch sheet that I have just laminated so that I can work on it. You'll need some wet dry sandpaper, and I will go through the grits I use later on, but just a selection from coarse to smooth is very handy for what we're going to do today. And as always, something to keep your tools clean and wiped as we go through, and a pasta machine dedicated to polymer clay use that will be used for doing our skinner blends and other aspects of the tutorial. So that's it for the tools. So let's move on to the clay you're going to need. So these are the colours I'm using for today's project. I'm using Fimo Soft, but all brands of polymer clay will work nicely for this technique. The clay we need most of is our background colour. And there's about 3/4 of a pack of this, so quite a lot. That's 1.5 ounces, 42 grams of clay. All the others are nice small amounts, and each of those are 1/4 ounces or 7 grams of clay. I've got Calypso Blue for our background colour. Then we've got Cherry Red, Indian Red, Flamingo, and the Sunflower Yellow. They're going to be put together as one skinner blend. And then we've got Gold, White, and Jade, and they're going to go together for another skinner blend. Condition all of them in their separate colours. If you don't know how to condition clay, I do have a video showing you how to do that, and I'll put links to that in the details below the video. And condition all the clay thoroughly and put it through on a medium setting of your pasta machine. So on my machine, that's actually setting number 3. And just make them all into flat sheets, and we will work from there. Okay, so I've conditioned my clay and put it through on setting number 3 of my pasta machine, and I'm starting with the blend we're going to do for the main part of the flower. I'm going to do a 4-way skinner blend from the yellow through to the flamingo, the Indian red and the cherry red, and for anyone new to skinner blends, I do have a video showing you how to do this in detail, which I will put in the links to this video below. But for now, all we're going to do is these end two, we're going to make a diagonal cut across and layer them up one on top of each other. And these middle two I'm just going to do in straight lines. And because I've got 2 layers on that, I'm just going to flip these over so we've got 2 layers on here, and then I'm going to put them together so I've got that strong diagonal line going down through the whole piece. I'm not being particularly neat, as you notice. As long as we've got a rough oblong, that's all we need. And all I'm going to do now is fold them over. And because I now have 4 layers of clay to put through the pasta machine, I will put on one thicker setting of my pasta machine, so setting number 2. And each time I put it through, I'm going to put it through fold first, collect it in my hand, and then fold bottom to top, until we end up with a nice smooth blend. But I say, for more tips on how to keep a nice rectangular shape to your Skinner blend and a few other bits and pieces, pop on across to the Skinner blend tutorial if you haven't seen it already. But I'm going to go and get this blended, and I'll bring you back when that is done. Okay, so here's our blend, nicely put together, so we've got yellow all the way through to the deeper red. And all I'm going to do now is just fold this in half, because I don't want too much in the way of height when I'm making my cane. So that's probably about 1.5 inches, about 4 centimetres in height is perfect. And now I'm going to put it through the pasta machine that way down, so the fold is at the side, keeping tight hold of this end as it goes through to make sure it doesn't sort of move across the pasta machine. And I'll bring you back when I've done that, on the same setting that I was already on, so still on setting number 2. So what you now want to do is to get as long and thin a piece as you possibly can. So I know my machine's good, so I'm going to put it straight through down onto my thinnest usable setting, which is setting number 9 on my machine. But if your machine shreds your clay, then simply go down one setting at a time until you get to your thinnest usable setting and stop at that point. So I'm going to get mine done, so I get a nice long thin piece, and I'll come back when that's done. So there we go, our nice long sheet of polymer clay with our blend going all the way through. A couple of quick tips for you. Always put the dark end through first, then if you get any dirt, it doesn't notice quite so much on the dark end. And the other tip is, every time you change your setting on the pasta machine, just turn the handle a couple of times in the normal direction, and that will take away any clay that might have got caught up underneath, so it minimises the chance of getting clay stuck. So all we're going to do now is we're going to concertina this backwards and forwards. I'm not worried about the ragged end because I know it all comes out in the wash. If you are, then obviously just neaten it off. And I don't want to be too wide with this concertina, so I'm probably going about 3/4 inch, just under sort of 2 centimetres, because we want a nice depth to our concertina of clay. And again, I'm really not going to worry about the dirt on the end of that. So I'm just going to neaten this off to make it a nice square block of clay. And that's about what we're looking for. So probably just about under 2 inches, about sort of 4.5, 5 centimetres. So now we can take some of our Calypso blue clay, which I conditioned and put through setting number 3. And I'm just going to sit this piece on top. And what we want is a piece that's going to wrap all the way around it. And if it doesn't quite fit, which this probably won't, then one of the tricks you can do is, having put the bottom piece down nice and tight so it's attached to it, just walk your clay around, and all I'm doing is I'm actually just stretching the clay ever so slightly as I go. And by doing that, you can generally make a piece that wasn't going to fit pull all the way around. Okay. So now what we're going to do, we've got 1 petal and we need to change this into 5 petals. So we're going to work to a formula, because it's always quite fun when you're doing things to work to a formula, it makes it easy as well. So I'm going to use the measuring sheet in a minute, but the first thing we're going to do is just change the orientation of this, because I want more of a diamond-y shaped petal. So I'm just going to round off those corners and put the diagonal across in that way. Do this one at the top and one at the bottom, because then you can see where you're going to go all the way down. And once you've changed the orientation of it, you can now start to reduce this in a square shape. And by reducing, all I'm doing is I'm pressing in with my thumb and my finger, nice even pressure along the whole length. Occasionally swap over, because if you're like me, you'll tend to find that you start off nice and strong and end up slightly less as you go along. So what we're going to do is we're going to carry on doing this until this is about 4 inches in length. Okay, once it's roughly there, find one end. I'm just going to neaten that off slightly because that's going to be our first one. Take off one piece, and that's going to be our first petal. You can make sure at this stage, because that one's gone slightly out of shape, make sure you've got the yellow down at one side and the darker red at the other. So that's our first piece. Now we're going to do the same with this again, make it slightly longer till it's just under 4 inches. because we want a nice graduated size of our petals as we go. Fraction more. Go up to where your neat end is, take off 2 pieces. Again, they're not too bad, they're at the bottom so they can stay as they are. And this last piece we want to go till it's about 2 inches, so we can take off 2 pieces. And for those of you in centimetres, then 2 inches is 5 centimetres. So there we go. That's one piece, and there's our other piece. And again, got the nice diamonds down the bottom. So all we're going to do now is decide which way we're going to orientate these. So I'm going to have it so that the yellow is down towards the middle of our petal. So I'm going to make sure that this end's nicely sort of rounded off, and this end I'm going to pinch in quite sharply. Okay, so I'll just use my fingers down there to pinch it in, and then we're going to repeat that for all 5 of our pieces. So round off the end. If your concertinaed clay starts to pull apart here, don't worry about it, that's not going to sharpen the finished piece. You can just push it in slightly just to make sure it's sort of melded, but say don't panic about that. Now, if like mine, your big piece has gone quite a lot longer, I'm just going to push that down to make it slightly bigger and flatten it out slightly, because what you want is you want them all roughly to be the same height. Doesn't matter what height they are, as long as they're all roughly the same height. And when you've got them done, you can start putting them together. So the 2 pieces are going to sit like that, and then these 2 are going to go like that. Turn it over the other way, make sure your bottom side is sitting in nicely as well. And that's that piece of our cane done. So now let's go on to the next Skinner blend. So for this Skinner blend, we're going to add the detail on our cane. As before, we're going to diagonal cuts through the outer pieces, straight cut through the middle piece, and we're going to go from the gold to the white, and then across to the jade colour. And what I'm going to try and do is put it in such a way, I'm going to skew it slightly there, so that I don't have much of a mix where the gold and the jade are going to go together. So I've actually got a little bit of the white left in the middle. So I'm just going to fold those, as I've done before. And then exactly the same as before, put through setting number 2 now, because I've got the 4 layers of clay again, through that way, collect each time, fold and fold and fold until we get our nice blend, and I will bring you back when we've done that. So there's our blend, and then we're going to do exactly the same as we did before. So fold this one in half, put it back through setting number 2 on the pattern machine to give myself a longer piece, put it back through again on your thinnest usable setting till you get a really long piece, and then we're going to concertina it backwards and forwards. And this time when we concertina it, we're going to do it probably about 1/2 inch, just over 1 centimetre in width. So I'll bring you back when I've got my concertina done. So there's our plug of clay, all nicely concertinaed, and just as we did before, we're going to cover this in a layer of the Calypso blue. This time, no need to pull it longer, it fitted nicely round. And I'm going to reduce this till it's about 3 inches in length. We're going to cut it in half, just roughly, and one bit's going to go on one side because we're going to come back to that. Now this piece, again, we need to do exactly the same and change the shape of it as we did before, but this time we're going to change it slightly differently. So we're going to have 2 different shapes. So the first thing we're going to do is to make this about 2 inches in length. It's about 5 centimetres. And we're going to chop off one piece. And this piece, exactly the same as we did before, we're going to change the orientation of it. And we're going to pull that up so we get quite a nice long sort of diamond shape. I'll just push that down because we want it the same height as your previous cane was. So that's our first piece. And then this piece, we're going to reduce this one to it's about 2 inches in length. And for these two, we just want them to be a triangular shape. So I'm going to do the green as more of a point. So just push that in to create more of a point and leave the gold bit flat. Same on both sides, so again just push that in. Once you've got it going, push it flat. And then when you finish your 3 pieces, you're going to put them so that the lighter bit of the green, that nice jadey green, is towards the top. And then we're going to make sure they're the same height as our piece here, because that's going to sit under there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give ourselves a little round of clay that's going to sit in there. So take some of your Calypso blue. So I'm still working here on that first larger piece, the half a pack, 1 ounce of clay. Haven't started on the smaller one yet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this out ever so slightly. When I've got a nice even bit of the blue, I'm going to chop myself a piece that will fit on the inside. Make sure it's the same top and bottom. And then I'm going to pull these sides down slightly. And this is where you can just mess around, just get yours to fit in some shape where it just looks nice. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine. So I'm actually going to chop this off slightly because this is getting longer than this one. So let's just chop ourselves off a piece. That's better, because I want this piece to be smaller in proportion than this piece was here. So I now know I've got tiny little gaps. Can you see the little gaps in here and in here? So what I'm going to do is to make this piece smaller. And then I'm going to just feed in some extra clay either side so that when that piece sits on, it sits on at a better angle. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to move on to my my last piece of the Calypso, my quarter pack, put it through quite a thickish setting, so setting number 2 on my machine, and we're going to wrap the whole of this piece in 1 layer of the Calypso blue. So here I've put the clay through on quite a thick setting, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tissue blade to make this the right height to go around my piece. Chop off the excess. Make it fractionally wider if that helps, and then with a knitting needle to hand, starting at one end, go round, and wherever you've got a slight groove, just push this extra clay in. So make sure it goes nicely into all the grooves around our petal points. When it gets to the end, just chop it off. And now that has given us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little points which have got little sort of triangle indents. So they're the ones we're going to now cover up or insert with our extra little cane. So putting that to one side, go back to the half of the cane we had of this one left over previously. And I'm just going to change it very slightly by, with your knitting needle, press down really, really hard to draw that blue clay right into the middle of our piece, and then pull the top bits over, and we should have created a little triangular cane. And now reduce this till it's 6 times the size of your cane. So mine's just over an inch, so I know I need probably sort of 7.5 inches worth. Again, take your time, working slowly from one end to the other. Every so often turn it round and just work until you've got it the right size. So once you have got a good length, drop off the neat end so you see roughly what you've got, and then you can start chopping your pieces the right size for your cane. And then you just need to decide which way up you're going to put them. So I'm going to put them where the that little insert, that line is going towards the middle, and just push them in and bend them round to fit the gap, and just repeat all the way around. So there we have our 6 pieces sitting around the outside. So the last thing we're going to do is you're going to take whatever amount of Calypso clay you have left, so the darker colour you've been using as your outliner, and I'm going to put this through on as thick a setting as I can get to create a piece that's going to go all the way around the whole of our outside. So for me, I've done it on setting number 2, because that's actually just slightly wider, so I know I can go all the way around. Just take off the ragged edges and see where we've got to. And I'm not worried that it's ever so slightly wider. Just need to pull it just a fraction to get it to go all the way around to that edge. Take off the excess. And that is our basic cane finished. So what I'm going to do, if you can see, I've already got a natural point here. That actually is quite a natural point there. And once you put those 2 in, you start to get quite a natural point down the outside. If you turn over and do the same, what you end up with is quite a good shaped square cane. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use it in that square shape, and we are going to start reducing it down. I'm going to start by leaving it flat on the tile, and I'm just going to press in along the middle. Now say we will get some distortion on the end, don't worry about it. What I'm trying to create is a sort of hourglass type shape. You see that starting to go ever so slightly? Turn it up on the other side and do the same again. Now I'm not going to stop the distortion on the end by doing this, I'm only mitigating it. But any mitigation is good. So once I've done it like that, then I will actually just start pulling up and pulling the rest of it out to the same size. Every so often, put it back down on the tile. So when I've got it on the tile, let me do it on a small tile for you. So when I've actually put it on a tile, what I'm doing is then I'm just working closer down to the bottom edge and pushing in and working my way down. And just keep repeating that. So I will now speed up. So I'm getting close to that 1 inch, and I want to make sure that my cane is the same on every single side. So I'm going to take a roller and I'm going to roll out all of the lumps and bumps where my fingers had pressed in. I'm also looking to get nice sharp corner edges. I will use my measuring sheet and I will have a good look over and press down just along the bottom to make sure that each of the bottom edge is nicely along one of those main lines. I will also, with my fingers, go in and pinch when I'm virtually at the stage to make sure the corners are really nice and sharp, because we're going to take individual slices of this and start layering it up. So I want those corners really nice and sharp. And then once I've got them sharp, I will give the whole thing a final roll and make sure I've got it exactly the right size for what I need. And when I'm happy with it, now we go for the moment of truth. Now obviously you can start at one end and start cutting through, because this is a tutorial and I think you want to see what I've done. So you will chop down through and you will get to see the cane that we've produced. So I need some scrap clay, and because I know on these ends I've got quite a bit, I can now take off, and actually that was less than I thought. Let's take off about the same on this side. Yes, you've got more on that end. So I'll go down on this side until I start to see an OK pattern coming through. So these pieces now I can put through my pasta machine, mix it until the colours become thoroughly mixed together, and that will give me a nice base colour to put my slices of clay on. I just chopped off probably just over about an inch in length, because I'm going to leave the rest to do some other designs with. You've got enough here to make several different pieces out of the one cane. So I've just finessed this and got it to as neat as I can to make it a 1-inch square. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off 4 even slices. Now, it's not the thickness of the slice that's important, it's that each slice is the same. And I've also just taken some of the scraps from the ends of the cane, put them through on a medium setting, setting number 3 on my pasta machine, and I've got a piece just big enough to take 4 of these slices. So, turning it on its side, and I've already neatened off the end, I'm just going to take 4 even slices. And then all I'm going to do is pull the slices apart and put them so that this light part is towards the middle. So I know that if that one's going that way, I'm going to flip it over so it fits that way. That one will fit down there, and that one needs to go over to flip onto that side. And there we've got our 4 pieces nicely positioned. So what I need to do now is I'm going to start with the knitting needle, just going to gently roll any of those gaps until they're more or less closed. And this is why it's good to have the same thickness of slices, because it means you've got less disparity between the pieces as they sit next to each other. Same in this middle piece where there's a slight gap. I'm just going to persuade the clay in towards the middle, and once I've got it pretty neat, we can take our piece of wax paper, place it nicely over the top, and either with your finger, with the side of a nice clear rolling pin, or with the stainless steel soap, I'm just going to do small circular motions just to make sure I've got a really nice smooth surface. So I will normally start with the soap, and then when I've got it nice and I can feel it's nice and flat, then go over it with the roller. Now we're doing a square pendant, so we don't need anything other than just these 4 slices. So take a bit of time, sort of make sure that they're nice and flat, because you want to spend as little time sanding and polishing afterwards as possible. So I'm just going to peel the paper off, have a real good look, make sure there's no bits that are uneven, and actually that's pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to finesse the sides, because wherever you've pressed down there'll be a slight distortion. So with the blunt side of your blade, I'm just going to push in to make these sides even. When they are nice and square, the next thing I'm going to do is peel the whole thing off my sheet, because even though you think your piece is nice and square, you'll generally find it's more oblong, and I can see obviously it's a lot longer on these sides than it is on this side. So you can just gently pull it more square and just mess around with it until you've got it nice and the size you want. And once you're ready, you can go back at this stage if you want and neaten up those square sides again. We're going to chop down, but we're not going to chop down straight, we're going to chop down on a slight angle. So I'm going to bevel the edges inwards. So I'm cutting down and cutting at an angle, probably about 45 degrees. Cut down and flick away. And if I put it up so show you, can you see there that it's gone down at an angle? So I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. And that means we'll get a nice pristine square on top, but when we curve this and sit it on our bowl to bake, you won't see any of the underneath colour of the clay. Pick the whole piece up, have a look, make sure it's still nice and square and the right shape, and then when we're ready, take whatever mould you're using. So in this case, I say I'm using this dome, metal dome, and just very gently curve your piece over the side of a bowl. Just an ordinary dessert bowl is very good for this. I'm just going to gently go down to make sure that all the sides are nicely pressed down. And then I'm going to just pop that on a tile, wrap the whole thing in foil and bake as per the manufacturer's instructions for the brand of clay you are using. So we'll bring that back when it's out of the oven. And whilst that's one curing, you can always have a play around and sort of have some fun with the piece. I chopped off the end that was going slightly towards the distorted end, found a cutter shape that I sort of liked the look of, deciding to put it that way up, and then I just pressed in, rounded off the corners here, rounded off the corner there, and worked on it till I ended up changing the shape of the cane so it was roughly the same size and shape as my cutter. And then I have just taken off 2 slices. So either before or after, I can drill little holes in the top of those, and then there'll be a nice pair of earrings to go with the pendant. So basically just play around, have some fun, and do all sorts of things you want to do with your nice new Art Nouveau cane. So here are the pieces straight out of the oven, nicely cooled. So what I'm going to do now is sand and polish these, ready to make into a pendant and earrings. And I prefer to do them at this stage, obviously with the earrings, because all they're going to need is a jump ring and the earring findings. But I haven't yet put a bail on the back of this. So I'm going to sand and polish, and I will do this with wet dry sandpaper. And I'll do it 240 grit, 600, 1000, 1500 and 2000, and I will do that over a sink or a basin of water with a little detergent in, just to help the whole process smooth along. And when I'm doing it for this one, because it's quite a nice large piece, I will generally fold, obviously starting with the lowest grit, fold it in half, and with gloves on my hand to protect my hands, just circular motions all the way around, paying particular attention to the edges. And I will move from the lowest grit all the way up to the highest grit until I've got a lovely smooth surface, and then I will simply buff on a polishing wheel. So here's our finished piece, and I have sanded and polished this. We've got the backing on, which I've just glued in place, and I've just added a bit of Boona cord with a simple lobster clasp on the end to make into the pendant. Obviously I've done it so it's a square, but you could easily do it on the diagonal and have the pendant hanging that way. I've also just finished off a pair of earrings, and they're the ones where I forced the cane into a drop shape. You can also obviously just keep the whole thing as a drop shape, and again I've just put the same backing on. And you could also make tiles of your piece to add them into a nice design where the pattern goes through the whole design. So there's lots of options, all done with the same cane, just to give you some ideas of what you can do, and these are just a few. Obviously you can just have a play around with this and make all sorts of different jewellery bits, or just use it as a cane or a veneer for something else. But as usual, I will just show you some other colour options. There's this one, and this blend here was done with the emerald green, the apple green, sunflower yellow, and then we've got gold, white and the cherry red for the little insert bit, and the whole of the back was done with plum. So I've done that on the square, and then also done that as tiles on the round, so you can see how those come. And then you've got this colour option, and this one I've done with the peppermint, white, gold and apple green for this mix here. And then the inside bit here is lavender, white and aqua, and the whole of the background was done with the royal violet. And again, that's in the square, and that's when it's done in a tile on the round. And just to show you one other thing I did do, show the difference between all of these. This one, as I say, I sanded and polished. Then both of these two I didn't sand or polish, and this one's been done with a varnish, so it's just got a Derby varnish on it. And this one has been done with UV resin. So you can see there the different finishes that you can get depending on which technique you use. So that's the finish of the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed that one, and I hope you follow the link to Jan Montage's bail back, which is just such a brilliant way of doing the backs of your pendants. Thank you so much for watching, and a particular thank you for those who subscribe. I really do appreciate it. This is one I know I'm going to be wearing a fair amount, and hopefully you'll be making some and wearing yours too. That's it for now. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.